this is some place where you could get a political push federally to implement some of these laws. What would it, do you see that?
Yeah.
And what would it do to the plans?
Well, first of all, the parity laws simply say that you pay the same amount for an oral drug as you would for an IV-administered drug. If
That's
a drug
paid for under medical benefit.
Right. And ironically, today, when these first laws first started to come into play back in the 2008, 2009, there was very little cost sharing on the medical benefit, and there were higher cost sharing on the pharmacy benefit. Well, now over 60% of the patients in our plan on the commercial side have significant deductibles and coinsurance after that. And so in our plan, there's actually less cost sharing on the pharmacy benefit for an oral cancer drug than there is on the medical benefit. So the unintended consequence of this may be that the oral prices actually increase for patients, at least for a lot of patients in our plan, because of the deductibles and coinsurance associated on the medical side. So the notion of out-of-pocket caps had better come into play in that scenario, because we'll be pricing the oral drugs even higher for some patients.
You know, I don't think from a federal standpoint there's any chance. I mean, we have over 50% of the states now that have parity laws in place, and more. Every day we get contacted by another state because we've done a lot of work in the oral space, and what the indication is between, or the correlation between sort of price and compliance and things like that. And the bottom line is that even though there is a bill floating around Congress to sort of federal parity, I just don't think it happening at all. I think this is a state issue. More and more states are doing it, and it is in some cases good, but in other cases it's causing unintended consequences. I think, as you just said, John, you know, we don't always look at the big picture of what's happening here. But I think it's really important when you think about it from a patient standpoint, when a patient basically does have access to an oral drug and is disadvantaged because they're paying a huge amount more than basically that injectable. And you know, that brings me back to some other thing. When you started and you started talking to Kavita about value, you know, something, I spent a lot of time lately with a lot of the patient groups, a lot of the patient advocacy groups, cancer, tumor specific and non and all that. And they really are having a lot of problems with everybody talking about value, but not talking to the patients about value. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you talk about value things that, for example, the ASCO value framework, and now the evidence blocks by NCCN, and that go around the issue of establishing sort of value and the correlation on the price side, there's a lot of concern that it's not focused, that the value proposition, a lot of it isn't focused on the patients. There's not enough patient involvement and not enough patient advocacy involvement in terms of talking about value. And I actually think they're dead spot on.
Right, and also not a lot of talk about productivity, because the oncology products do offset other costs by moving care that used to be inpatient, outpatient, reducing the burden of certain regimens. So we don't look at those offsets as well.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, and we're actually doing a study on this, on the cost drivers of cancer care. We hired an outside actuary firm, because as I say, and I'm the first one to say, every time I speak, every time I'm in front of a drug company, I said, look, you absolutely have to get a control on this drug price issue. It's going out of control. But they're just not the only ones with the problem. I think community oncology is. We're trying to be part of the solution. I think the academic institutions. So if you look at sort of the pie chart of the cost drivers of cancer care, depending on whether it's a private payer like Priority or it's Medicare, the slice of the pie that's drugs are 20 to 30%. And you're right, Scott, to begin with, they have a lot of influence in terms of the hospitalizations, the doctor services. But that pie chart has to be three-dimensional. And the other dimension of that are some of the academic centers. So for example, nothing wrong, but the 11 largest cancer centers in this country, MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan included, the government did a report, the GAO did a report and said that in 2012, it cost Medicare and beneficiaries $500 million more in those institutions because they have special Medicare exemptions. And I think when you look at that, I think when you look at hospitals that have 340B, I think we have to look at this as a bigger picture here in terms of, it's very popular in the media to talk about the drug price and to see the next, the next 60-minute segment on the drug prices. But I think it's a holistic view that we need to take here in terms of where the care is delivered, the site of care, and also all the other services. So a lot of people that are part of this problem, and a lot of people have to be part of the solution. It was very interesting. I heard Tom Brokaw speak recently. So, he's had his battle with cancer. And, he made two observations. He thanked the industry for the drugs that he took that literally have made him now, from a cancer patient to a survivor. But at the same time, he looked out at the audience of a lot of the executives and he said, but you've got to get a handle on this before somebody does. The problem is the system that's set up, and largely Medicare and some of the other things. For example, John talked about that someone on private insurance can get copay assistance. A Medicare patient can't. They can't get free drugs. So we've got this system that's set up that actually is an impediment to some creative things that can happen on the